Carbohydrates are broken down in two places in the body, the mouth and the small intestines. Now they're broken down by an enzyme called alpha amylase. Now alpha amylase is an enzyme that requires a pH of 7 to actually 7.4 to function properly. So the pH has to be in that small 7.0 to 7.4 window for the amylase enzyme to break down carbohydrates. If the pH is lower than that, then amylase will not function and you will not be able to properly break down your carbohydrates. So there's an alpha amylase that's found in the salivary glands in the mouth that is released when we eat starchy foods. And this alpha amylase breaks down carbohydrate chains several thousand sugars in length to about 8 glucose units or less. So it breaks these large starches, these carbohydrates, down into about 8 glucose molecules, which is an oligosaccharide or a polysaccharide. So this all happens in the mouth. Alpha amylase with these broken down carbohydrates then enter the stomach, and the stomach is a pH of 3, so the alpha amylase from the mouth is then inactivated, and it's likely broken down because alpha amylase again is a protein and the stomach breaks down proteins for us. So these small glucose chains then move on to the small intestine, and the small intestine has an overall pH of about 7. It varies in different places in the small intestine, but generally speaking the small intestine has a pH of about 7. Where there's another alpha amylase that's released by the pancreas that goes to the small intestine and then breaks these small glucose chains down into disaccharides and trisaccharides. So a disaccharide is 2, a saccharide is a sugar, so it's 2 sugars, which is maltose. Maltose are 2 glucose molecules kind of fused together. And the trisaccharide here is maltriose, which are 3 glucose molecules bound together. So the alpha amylase again breaks these glucose molecules down into these smaller disaccharide and trisaccharides, which again are maltose and maltriose, which are both glucose, these small glucose polymers. Now also in the small intestine we have another enzyme, which is glucosidase, and those break down, and this enzyme breaks down the maltose and maltriose into their individual glucose sugars. And it's these glucose sugars that are then able to be absorbed by the small intestine. Now again, pH is critical here. The pH in the mouth and the pH in the stomach have to be at about 7 or a little bit more basic for these alpha amylases to function correctly. So other vitamins and minerals that are also absorbed in the small intestine other than glucose are chlorine, sulfuric acid, calcium, magnesium, iron, zinc, copper, magnesium, glucose, galactose, fructose, vitamin B1, B2, B6, folate, calcium, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and again maltose, sucrose, lactose, cholesterol, bile salts, and B12. These are all absorbed from our food by the small intestine. So it's got a big job here. In my opinion is that when we absorb glucose through the small intestine, it helps us also absorb these other critical minerals and vitamins. So a couple of things to bring up here. A, you want to make sure your pH in your mouth is neutral to is about 7 or a little bit even more alkaline. And what you can do is you can actually test the pH of your mouth with a pH strip. I actually did this before filming this, and it's pretty simple. I just used this small dish here, spit in it. Preferably you should spit first thing in the morning and take a pH sample to get a good reading, and you can see mine is about 7. So you can check your pH of your mouth to see if it's alkaline enough for you or neutral enough for you to even have alpha amylase work. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning here is that since we absorb most of our vitamins and minerals through our small intestines as well as our sugars, it might be something to consider for taking an enema every once in a while. I think adults should have an enema about 3 or 4 times a year anyway, depending on their diet. But if you are struggling with diabetes and you're eating well and you're saying, I'm eating all the right foods, my blood sugar is still high, I would consider an enema because you might not be absorbing the vitamins and minerals you get from food. And again, if you watch some of my other videos, you'll see clearly that all these vitamins and minerals are critical for us to process glucose correctly once it enters the bloodstream. Okay, and I just wanted to mention, so everything here in green I got from Digestive Wellness, page 50. I'm also going to leave the other few sources, which are my biochemistry textbooks, in the description below. And if I think of anything else, I'll also leave it in the description below. But anyways, make sure you're breaking your complex carbohydrates into simple sugars so it can be digested in the proper place. It would be better, in my opinion, to eat complex carbohydrates so they can get digested in the small intestine. It may be that we're eating simple sugars and they're getting digested into the bloodstream in the wrong place in our body, which would be in the mouth. So basically watch your simple sugars, get enough of your complex carbs so they're broken down in the right place in your body to help possibly absorb all the vitamins and minerals that are also absorbed by the small intestine. So best of luck.